The force is investigating recovering around £2.8 million in 7 separate frozen bank accounts, an application the 3 defendants are all contesting. And lastly, Storm Beryl has made landfall in the United States, in Texas, after forcing the closure of major oil ports and flight cancellations. Storm Beryl was gusting at up to 80 miles an hour, but the weather system's now expected to weaken. Last week, Storm Beryl swept through Jamaica, Grenada, St Vincent and the Grenadines, toppling buildings and power lines and taking the lives of at least 11 people. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Now it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Tuesday's newspapers with 3 top comedians, myself, Simon Evans, if I say so myself. Joining me tonight are Headliners Big Baller Josh Howie and his homie, the big dog, Nick Dixon. Both well, gentlemen?
Yeah, I like that intro. Allow myself to introduce myself.
I know, I slipped that in there. I said top comedians, and then I realised that I'd introduced myself as one, so I wasn't quite sure.
You're a top comedian.
I am a top comedian.
You
I'm
are?
probably the top comedian.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm retired.
That's true. You've got to remove your name from...
Yeah, James O'Brien's told me.
Absolutely.
But I want to anyway, so I totally agree with him.
What would we be called now?
That's right. Yeah. Nick Dixon Skeptic.
I'm thinking about going Nick... I actually don't want to say it because people will just steal it and get it and then they'll squat it and try and make me pay for it.
King.
But someone has my name who's just an egg who never posts. And Elon said he was going to get rid of these people, and he hasn't.
He should crack the eggs.
With all the important issues, Nick.
The big Humpty. Let's have a look at our front pages this evening. We kick off with the Times, by the look of it. Pressure on Starmer, that's quick, to raise defence spending. The Telegraph have Rowling attacks PM over new women's minister. We'll be looking at that one shortly. The Guardian, Labour to fix front door of NHS by diverting millions to local surgeries. The Express, so what's it to be? Tax rises or cuts to our services? The iNews, Reeves was ready for war over the UK's Green Belt as she vows to take on NIMBYs. And finally, the Daily Star. I got 99 problems, but a beach ain't one. Those were your front pages. So we're going to begin with The Guardian, Josh.
Yeah, Labour to fix front door of NHS by diverting billions to local surgeries. Of the 165 billion that the NHS receives, less than 10% presently goes to GPs. Wes Streeting has come in and said he wants more of that money to go to GPs.
More of that money or some new money?
No, I don't think there will be new money. I think he's been talking quite clearly about not putting more money into it and actually just trying to fix with what they have. I'm sure that it's a huge organisation, 165 billion. There's going to be some wastage in there that I'm sure he can deal with.
Always. New government comes in, how are they going to find wastage, inefficiencies?
So, people are waiting, more than a couple of weeks now. A cynical person could say that, he's saying it's to kind of, so you can get on top of these things. I mean, really what the GP does anyway, if you've got something wrong with you properly, they'll just refer you to a specialist in a hospital. But, like I say, a cynical person might say that because this is the front door, it's like sprucing up the front door so that that's most people's interactions with the NHS. And at least then they can see someone quickly and get their wart removed or something.
Well, when Starmer said he was going to get rid of the 8 a.m. scramble, I was a little worried about how. I was like, is it going to be a 9 a.m. scramble or a 7 a.m.? It turns out by taking the money from hospitals. So we sorted the front door, but now I'm worried about the back door. I mean, if there's no money in hospitals, will the GP just sort of stop referring you at all costs? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you go and see the hospital at your back door quite regularly.
How dare you?
Although most people, their interaction with the health service is a visit to the GP, isn't it? And so if that is the point at which they begin to get frustrated, from a PR point of view, it's probably quite good.
But imagine they've got no money in hospitals and their whole job is to just block you from ever going any further.
Well, I went to the hospital recently. My father was in hospital for a couple of days, and I couldn't help feeling the whole architecture of the place, the signage that they used, the directions, the sense that you were lost permanently in a maze, might have been deliberately used to disguise the fact that they haven't actually got the facilities that they kind of make
it. Just a maze.
Yeah, just kind of endlessly circling Costa Coffee.
You eventually end up back at a GP.
Yeah. Anyway, good luck to him. I mean, God, I cannot remember a time, I'm 59, I cannot remember a time when the NHS wasn't in crisis, wasn't horrifically underfunded, but it does kind of feel like it's creaked a little bit further towards complete collapse lately.
I'd say Blair, they got it under control there.
Do you think so?
They did
Yeah.
a big investment and it made a difference.
Yeah.
You were around before it was even founded, and they just used to shoot people.
That's right, yes. We relied on benevolent funds. Let's have a look at the next one. We've got the Times, Nick.
Yeah, so the Times have the Starmer defence story, but we want to look at the Biden one, which is Biden dares critics to run against him for Democrat nomination. And it's quite funny because he refers to the elites, and you're thinking, if Joe Biden's not the elite, do you know what I mean? Like the deep state president of the United States and leader of the so-called free world. You're like, who are these elites then? But he means the elites within the party who are against him. And it is quite interesting because we have this schism finally, in the left in America. We have the New York Times trying to say Biden shouldn't run. Even Stephen King today saying Biden shouldn't run. But Biden wants to stay. And Lionel Shriver wrote a good piece on this saying, well, of course he does. If you're this old man, what do you want to do with the remainder of your years? Be the most important man in the world?
Yes.
Or just be some retired bloke on the beach?
But this is a calculation they've always had to make with dictators, isn't it? This is famously like part of the whole UN thing and so on. You have to give them an off-ramp. It's not a million miles away from Pinochet or whatever. You can't say the instant you stand down, we're going to swoop in and take you off to The Hague. You've got to say, listen, your life will carry on being great. Well, you're going to have loads of lunchtime meetings. You'll go around to hospitals.
3 months of it.
Yeah, but normally old people go to Florida in America. Imagine with DeSantis there, it's a disaster. So
confronted with the least woke state.
Well, speaking of off-ramps, they're talking about how his team have to produce these huge documents with him for him, and which complete with large photographs showing the exits to stages.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There are two basic kinds of videos with Biden, aren't there? There's him just seizing up and can't remember what he was trying to say, and there's him going the wrong way off from a podium, just like wandering off.
Just put a leash on him or something.
Yeah. Well, little lights that kind of the ones they use on aeroplanes to show you where you get off.
But it is frustrating. It is ego. He's trying to say
or
he's
Jill's ego.
It could be Jill's ego. It could be she likes to keep him busy. Maybe she.
Her
she's a bit younger
status
than him.
is raised, and that is significant, I think. And I don't even entirely kind of blame her. She's been around for a long time.
But they're public servants. They should think about what's the best for the country. Yeah. And the reality is, it's only going to get worse. He looks more frail. He looks more decrepit, frankly, and it's
becoming very divisive within the commentary, because every day there's a piece. Somebody will, like Stephen King today said, Mr. Biden, you need to step down. You've been a great servant. He's obviously totally on board with the Democrat, but then there'll be another Democrat going, you're making all the focus about Biden being unfit. What about the criminal? What about the adjudicated?
Two things can be wrong.
Of course, but it couldn't be better from the Republican point of view. They kind of want him to dangle on that hook for as long as possible.
Yeah, although I heard people claiming today, don't get complacent. Look what's happening in France. Trump still might not win.
But there's no coalition. What has happened in France? I understand that, and people did maybe get complacent. Not that I particularly want to see Le Pen, but. The reality is there was an organisation, there was a kind of coalition of very...
Yeah, they came together to keep out the right, yeah.
That isn't available, right? Trump and Biden. Who's he going to come together with? Kennedy?
No, I'm just worried that whoever the replacement is, they find a way. Well, I'm worried they'll find a way. Yeah. I'm not going to say they're going to rig it because of Ofcom, but by the way, Jill's Ego's an indie band I saw in the 90s, support Teenage Fan Club. I made that up.
Oh, did it? It was
a joke from 3 minutes ago.
It was a sort of John Peel-ish joke, played at the wrong speed. The Telegraph, Josh, we've got about a minute to go for this.
OK, Rowling attacks PM over new women's minister. So this was announced today that Annalise Dodds is now going to be the new women's minister, and J.K. Rowling's immediately stepped on that because Annalise Dodds, when she was interviewed, I think Women's Hour, she couldn't define what a woman was, or she said it depended on context. And a woman is very simply an adult human female.
Well, I agree with you, and I think everyone who comes on this show agrees with it, but just to play absolute devil's advocate, she's kind of right insofar as there are legal uses of the term woman which include men in our usage who have a gender recognition certificate. I mean, it's been widened beyond even that lately, which I think is crazy, right? But it does include them now legally, right? So there is a context in
but
which
she
the
was
word
being
woman
very
includes
sort
them.
of like evasive about it and not saying exactly what it is. You know, you could just say it's an adult human female, but there are people also.
Yeah.
But it's not looking good because this is a sort of one of the first sort of missteps, possibly, that Keir Starmer's taken, and people were looking to him to continue with the sort of the Tories' agenda of shutting down this gender ideology, which has been so harmful.
What do you think?
She's not a biologist, so firstly, how can you expect her to know what a woman is? And she's not a lawyer, as you say, it's now a legal issue, so how can she know? But yes, it's very disturbing. This is what I'm worried about with Labour, the stealth wokery, and this is what Blair's warned against in his piece in The Times. But this is a sort of rogue side that doesn't seem to be going along with the new Blair agenda.
But to be fair, I mean, Penny Mordaunt was at least as bad, wasn't she, at the Dispatch?
Awful,
You know, they have inherited 14 years in which the Tories could have made it quite specific and clear what the position was on this and left them no room.
Well, Sunak at the end there saying, "Oh, we're going to stop with the gender." You did it.
Yeah.
Your
All
government
happened
did
under
it.
their watch. OK, that's the front pages. Coming in part 2, Rachel Reeves finds the cupboard is bare. The race to avoid the leadership of the Conservative Party warms up. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
He fell into a coma. His family, of course, absolutely distraught. Because Turkey is outside the European Union, it therefore doesn't count under the Global Health Insurance Card scheme, which means that he is liable for these costs, and the family say that he's being held there for until they pay at least half the £41,000 that is owed.
One of our viewers here saying their premium, because they have health conditions, can be as much as £1,000. But if they're going to go overseas to, as you say, a non-EU country, they still should take it. That's the message here, isn't it? Don't take the risk.
Absolutely. Now, if you do have lots of pre-existing medical conditions, or you're an older person, my lovely mother-in-law is going to be 95 this week. She's still travelling, but only within Europe. And only because the cost of insurance is going to be many times the cost of the trip. And she just thinks, OK, well, I'll get emergency medical treatment free if I'm in the European Union and I've got that GHIC card. But beyond that, absolutely not. It's not worth the risk.
You have to have your card, do you, Simon, to get treatment within the EU? You should just apply for that online.
You should certainly apply for it online. Don't go to any of the scam sites that want to charge you money for it, because it's a free card. But actually, if you haven't, it's absolutely not a huge problem. Yes, you have to go through a bit of rigmarole, or at least your family do, to sort it out. But in general, if you go to a public hospital, they will treat you first and ask questions later in the European Union. And if you're a British resident, you should get it for free. Even if you forgot to get the GHIC card, they will sort it out eventually.
Britain's election channel. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. This is your first look at Tuesday's top stories. I'm Simon Evans, and I'm here with Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. We have The Guardian now, Josh. And to no one's great surprise, it's the "oh no, there is no money" moment from the new Chancellor.
Yeah, well, they weren't left a note. So this is what they're having to do instead. Rachel Reeves requests urgent assessment of spending inheritance. They're just going to go through the books. It's one way of avoiding anybody saying it's their fault. I think people are mature enough to go, they've inherited a bit of a mess, but also the motto seems to be of Labour of like, know the problem, admit the problem, to then be able to fix it, apart when it comes to Islamists. So before they can make any commitments, they really want... They did say here that they wanted to... I want to make clear to the Treasury officials that the manifesto commitments that we were elected on, and I'd go, well, you weren't really elected on any manifesto commitments. You were elected because the other people were rubbish.
Because you're not the Tories, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it was. No one was like, oh, we're going to vote in Labour to get this thing.
In fact, the manifesto commitments were infamously vague and
absolutely. But they do need to figure out where the money is. Yeah. And actually, this is what it's really about is also signalling to the markets that there's going to be stability. Yeah. And I think that's the most important thing.
They don't want a Liz Truss, Quasar moment. What do you think, Nick?
Well,
has there got any chance of growth?
I hope so, but I'm sceptical. I mean, they're taking pains to blame their inheritance and so on, but they would have spent, if anything, more during lockdown. So let's be realistic about that.
But that's what if.
Well, no, they would have spent more. And also,
what if?
And then I know
you're blaming them for something they haven't done.
I know you love Labour. The point is,
it's not love Labour, but I don't like blaming people for things they haven't done.
Josh, for God's sake,
it's so boring. It's terrible TV.
It's so boring.
So. She talks about having robust rules, but of course Rishi had rules as well. When you're under pressure, the question is, will she be able to keep them? She's already under pressure from the unions to, as they put it, tweak the rules governing debt and have more scope to raise spending. So they want more money already. Yeah. This question is, can she stick to that? But I don't know. Her bob is very strong. Maybe she can. And they've also got the house building thing. They're going to build way more houses. I've thought of a perfect solution. They want to release loads of prisoners and build houses on fields. Why not just convert the prisons into new flats? I've solved them a lot of money right there.
Perfect. I've been saying for some time, Nightingale prisons are the obvious thing. They knocked them up very quickly when they were hospitals, right? It's not that different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they just put on those collars like the dogs have, where if they go very far off, away from, they get a little nasty electric shock. So you don't need them to be high security in terms of the actual infrastructure. There are electronic ways around that now.
The problem with all this housing stuff is just they don't have the planners for it.
No.
And they can change the rules, but you still need to have these people to implement them, and they just don't have it in place.
I think, to be honest, if they remove the legislation against house building and just let it happen, it would happen, right? That's the best way to do it.
That's what they're probably going to do.
Yeah. They mainly need them to happen to get built in what are already Tory strongholds, because the people who live there will vote against them for it. But, as long as they've already lost them, they don't care. More enticing, Nick, than dismal spending plans. The Game of Thrones on the opposition benches has kicked off. Who will control the dragons?
The dragons, yeah, well, some of them are so wet that they've probably put the fire out, but some of them are all right. So it's Tory civil war ramps up as right blames moderates for putting Suicide Sunak in charge. That's his new name, with calls for leadership context. I'm talking about context again, it's the gender thing. Contest to be delayed for 6 months, and complaints about lack of stars to choose from. So Sunak, technically, this idea of 6 months, I've already heard he's not going to wait. I mean, can you really see him waiting 6 months? I've heard he's going to wait a couple of weeks and put a caretaker in. Do you really want to hang around for 6 months while they sort it out?
Well, there was a suspicion he called the early election so that he could get away, wasn't there?
Yeah, And he's talked about staying as an MP, but staying as leader, I don't think he'll want to do it for very long. But they want to take their time and not rush it, that's what they're saying. And so, yes, it's who's going to be the next leader. And Jenrick looks quite likely to me as an early call, because Kruger's already backing him. Sweller is thought to have been too bold in her language, and she keeps picking up reform. Maybe she's going to go there. She's at NatCon in Washington. She's saying that Farage has shown great courage. So she's doing an international reform UK speaking tour. So, I mean, Jenrick's a good call. There's Kemi. There's a few people gone.
I think Jenrick is definitely has some credentials, but does he have the kind of visibility of recognition? What do you think, John?
No, I don't. I think that they made a mistake. They should have voted Kemi Badenoch.
Yeah.
And I think they would have had been a different position possibly. Now, certainly not would have lost that many people, because she out of all of them is the best communicator.
Yeah.
She's very clearly spoken, very direct, is charismatic,
courageous,
and courageous, and speaks truth.
Yeah.
And people can spot that, and they can tell the difference. And I think she would absolutely destroy Starmer at PM question time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Kemi would be a good choice. The problem is, will she be a good choice for the party? I mean, someone's saying here, the One Nation bloc, this is Clifton Brown, I think, saying the One Nation bloc has learnt nothing. The weird thing is, the One Nation Wets control the party, but no one likes him in the electorate. So that's the big problem they have to deal with. The advantage of Jemenic is that he's a bit smoother, can talk in the kind of language of... he's kind of he's a bit like Starmer, the way he presents, but he actually wants to get tough on immigration and actually be a bit right-wing. That's the strength he has, but...
We can look forward, anyone who's sort of interested in politics, on the longer view. Some of the more interesting conversations do happen around this time, don't they? About whether you win elections from the middle or by, you know, putting clear blue water. Well, so, you know, Thatcher had some great election results with clear blue water, didn't she?
Yeah, but Cameron won it by trying to out-Labour Labour.
Yeah.
Labour won it by out-touring Tory.
As in
this
Blair,
time,
you mean?
Yeah,
Blair,
Blair, and, you know, now that... this time round, no.
OK.
In terms of, you know, pushing...
Safe and stable.
So stay right in the centre or whatever.
Yeah.
So it is... There is a decision now as to the soul of the Tory party, what they stand for. But also, it's somewhat of a poison chalice, because the miracle that Keir Starmer did in terms of turning around Labour's prospects, I just don't think that the Tories have it in them.
Daily Express now, Josh, and Reform membership, the elephant in the room of that last conversation, is surging to within a whisker of the SNP, in fact. Time for a coalition.
Well, yeah, Nigel Farage hails Reform membership surge as the party hits 65,000 people. They all paid 25 quid. 25,000 new members have joined since June 8th. And
it's almost as big as Nick's Substack.
It's a not insignificant number of people.
No. Well, it's almost, I checked, it is almost exactly the same as the SNP, and of course theirs hasn't been growing for some time. It's about half that of the Lib Dems. So, yeah, I mean, that is, you know...
I mean, it seemed like it would, you know, the Reform was somewhat of a, I don't know, not... It was here to make
single
a point.
issue,
a single issue thing. Whether it was good, but it looks now that there's a bit legs in it.
Yeah,
no, it's good. 65,000. I mean, it's also the same number of votes the Tories got at the election, so it's a lot of it's a big number. I'm never sure about the benefits of being a member, because people can see you on the list, can't they? And that's always my concern, and they sort of find you.
Yeah.
I mean, the benefits in the Tories are meant to be that you would get to pick the leader, but they're always trying to do away with that. So would you get to pick the Reform leader?
Well, they got to pick Liz Truss, didn't they? Found a lot of good.
Yeah, but then people started to say, "Oh, we want to get rid of it,"
yeah.
And some say, "Well, no, we've got to keep it to stay in touch with the members." But would you get to pick the leader of Reform if you were a member?
I wonder. I've never been a member of a political party, and you know, that's not who I am. But I can sort of understand how it might be quite nice to be like us, you know, like people are with the football team or something, you know, that kind of feeling like I'm part of this organisation.
Let's face it, Farage is going to do what he wants. And you're not going to choose anything over Farage. So what do you get as a member? Do you get? I want to know what benefits you get. Maybe Reform can tell me. Yeah, stickers would be nice.
Cool.
Yeah. Maybe a thing hanging from the rearview mirror, like a little
dongle,
like a perfume tree.
Yeah, maybe a Nigel Farage, like a bobbing head.
Yeah.
That's worth it.
Or a dog toy. Telegraph now, Nick, on the King's speech. Starmer isn't stammering.
Is this... Oh, OK.
The people smuggling.
No, the people smugglers, yeah. It's suspected people smugglers to be hit with travel bans in King's speech. Yeah, you threw me with that King's speech reference.
King's speech, I'm sorry. But, caught my eye.
Yeah, I mean, this idea where you worry, like, why wasn't this happening already? So they're going to use serious crime prevention orders against suspected people smugglers, and there can be a maximum penalty of up to 5 years in jail. You're like, were we not doing this already? I mean, previously it had been restricted to terrorists, so you weren't allowed to do anything to these people smugglers, and there's going to be enhanced stop and search power. So this is one of these where you wonder. There's a good analogy from Nima Parvini, I've mentioned it before, where he talks about this fingerprint-operated machine. It's an analogy for the sort of civil service and governance apparatus, and that when Sunak used it, it doesn't work, but it only works when Labour... Like, this is the kind of thing, like, why couldn't we do this before if we're going to do it now? Or is it because of Starmer's experience he always talks about in smashing the gangs, all the gangs he's smashed, and criminal gangs?
I've mentioned him before. A friend of mine who's a Telegraph leader writer and so on, Sam Ashworth-Hayes, says this about the Labour come in, and it is immediately obvious that they are willing and able to use the machinery of government to do things that the Tories never seem to want to. I mean, this, as you say, should have been a Tory, but it does seem that they're just muffled all the time.
Well, because there was all infighting and you know, it seems like the whole Tory when they're in power is just all about them just doing leadership elections. But anyway, obviously this is a good idea. I mean, at the same time, banning smugglers, like people smugglers, from travel is like that's their job. That's like banning drug dealers from buying crack or something. Like, they can do it. This is what they do. Also, you don't need to be in the UK to do it. A lot of people, they can be based in France or wherever. There's one guy who's based in Iran, and it's not
going to eliminate the crime.
No, it isn't, but it does show their seriousness of this. Obviously, now they've pulled Rwanda. That's £270 million that we spent on that and got nothing for it.
Was that all? I thought it was twice that.
No, it was 270 million. It would have been 100 million more if we'd continued.
Oh, I feel OK about it.
Oh, really? Well,
it's only
there you go.
I've wasted. Over to France for the final one this section with the Daily Mail, Josh. Sentiments might be familiar to British Jews, of course.
Yeah, Jewish families are urged to leave for Israel after election sees anti-Semitic hard left storm to victory in disaster for Macron. Yeah, this is from the chief rabbi of, I think, Paris synagogue, and it's, French Jews, as British Jews to a degree, but not as an extreme position, are caught between a rock and a hard place here because you have the right or the far right, depending on which newspaper you read, with Macron, and you have the left, their leader of the left movement, who essentially won this election with a bit of gerrymandering, as we talked about, is sort of their Corbyn. Who has said a few things in the past which are not good. There's a lot of anti-Semitism within the far left. This is a really...
But they're going to be forming a coalition, right? And there's no single big party.
That's not been confirmed.
And we don't know. France is looking borderline ungovernable with this kind of arrangement anyway, isn't it? Obviously the anti-Semitism in this particular story, and that isn't, separated from... a bit of a worrying trend, which there hasn't been much talk about in our recent general election. 5 independent candidates, all of whom are independent in the sense that they seem to represent Gaza ahead of their own constituency.
It's madness. But in France, there's a real issue. They've got a much higher Muslim population. Unfortunately, there is a serious anti-Semitism issue within Muslim culture. You had a 12-year-old Jewish girl gang raped and then forced to convert to Islam.
And the chap who's even further to the right of Le Pen is Eric Zemmour. He is Jewish, right? Algerian Jew, I think. But that may be I don't know whether that eliminates the whole... It's kind of weird how there's different, inversions, perhaps, of what you would traditionally think of as being continental, the source of continental anti-Semitism.
Yeah, the so-called far right, Jewish people, in my estimation, would be much safer with them. You talk about Wilders in Holland, who's very pro-Israel, and I imagine Le Pen and Bardella will be far safer for Jewish people than these far lefties who are openly anti-Semitic.
I got you.
Oh, that's my bad.
Sorry, mate, I have to run along, but we'll get you on for the third time.
Just about,
Part 2, we have... part 3, we have election night ratings, Rowling rates the cabinet, and a blueprint for Asylum. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Hello, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. The weather's going to make it feel not much like July as we go through the next 24 hours, with some heavy, persistent rain pushing up from the south in association with a weather system that's already made its way across some southern parts so far today. The heaviest rain through this evening and overnight is going to be across parts of southwest England and South Wales. Could see totals of 60 to 70 millimetres over higher ground, some travel disruption and some flooding possible. Even elsewhere across much of England and Wales, it is going to turn pretty wet overnight, but with that, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A different story further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland, where we get any clear skies, temperatures will dip into mid-single figures. Taking a look closer at first thing tomorrow morning, and by 7 o'clock in the morning, far southern parts of England. Here, the heavy persistent rain will have cleared, but it's staying cloudy with some damp weather around. More persistent rain lingering across this central slice of the UK, and this rain will be starting to push its way into parts of Northern Ireland and perhaps the far south of Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland it's actually looking like a fairly decent morning. Perhaps the best of the sunshine will be towards the west, a little bit cloudier towards the south and east. Through the rest of the day we are going to see this band of rain continuing to edge further northwards, so spilling in across more parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and lingering across the far north of England. Elsewhere further south, staying fairly cloudy and some outbreaks of rain around, but there should be some brighter breaks, and in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures peaking around 21 or 22 Celsius. Generally, though, they are below average for the time of year. More very wet weather to come across our northern parts as we go through Wednesday. A bit drier further south, maybe some sunny breaks at times, but also some showery outbreaks too. And there will be some more showers to come as we go through Thursday and Friday. That being said, there is a drying trend, so optimistically hoping for some drier weather by the weekend.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. Nick, the Telegraph now have a story about the various TV channels' fortunes on election night, though there is one that is notable by its absence in this story.
Yes, well, we were notable by our absence on GB, and that was a big flaw in our coverage, but better not say too much. It says BBC loses 2 million viewers in election night ratings battle. And it's just about how, the ratings are way down, and Channel 4 actually beat them quite considerably. So... and actually, to be fair, Channel 4 did have some sort of quite interesting coverage, if we're being very objective. I mean, as annoying as Alistair Campbell is, it was quite funny to watch him and Nadine Dorries go at it. Kwasi Kwarteng was good, and it was just quite interesting.
It was properly ill-tempered, wasn't it? Between Campbell and Dorries. It was quite compelling,
Yeah, I mean, so there's something in that, and they had some quite good people on. GB were good, of course, but ITV, you sort of flick over to occasionally for the comedy value, but they were all right. BBC, the strength of the BBC one is they put the figures on the screen, the results, very clearly. That's what I want to see. Yeah. And Channel 4's the strength, they had some good arguments. But, yeah, I mean, that's basically...
The two BBC presenters, Laura Koonsberg and Clive Myrie, they're well enough known, but they don't quite have that huge gravitas that the BBC can sometimes reach.
Yeah, you missed Dimbleby flicking around.
Yeah.
None of the presenters...
Or Hugh Edwards, of course, they said last time, which one would want to dwell on his absence, but...
none of the presenters were great.
Whereas Channel 4 had a bit more of a showbizy vibe, right?
They should have just had me. I mean, none of the presenters are likeable. That's my problem, because I'm flicking around, I'm like, where's the... Obviously, except on GB, but I'd have put me on, personally.
Who did we have? Do you know, GB News? Who did we
we have brilliant people like Camilla and Patrick. I mean, I'm not dissing them. I'm dissing the other channel.
Before people message in, I mean, I know what Nick meant. Channel 4 won in terms of their ratings went up by 500,000, but they were still like millions low.
Still
less than BBC.
Well, BBC went from
6 to 4 million.
6 to 4.
And Channel 4 went from half a million
to a million.
To a million. So anyway, I just don't want people messaging.
Last time, I remember there was a famous thing when Channel 4's they had a panel that had like comedians on. I think maybe Nish Kumar or Catherine Ryan or something like that. And there's a famous shot where the exit polls came in and Johnson had just obliterated and they all went...
I know. That was funny, but now they were so smug, was it this time was the problem?
I would say that part of the reason isn't necessarily the quality of the coverage, was just I think it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
That might be part of it. I did watch, I watched GB News and I was flicking back and forth. I didn't like the BBC one. I just didn't think they had much chemistry. I don't mind them individually. And you were talking before about this thing about chickens.
That's funny. There's a quote in there, where he tries to extend a not counting your chickens metaphor. And I did Radio 4 thing with News Quiz with Lucy Porter, among others, the other day, and she said she'd watched it. She said that Myrie and Koonsberg had the sort of energy of a divorced couple at their child's parents' evening, trying to kind of get along.
It's like they were forced together.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, here we have TV Gold.
Yes, exactly.
But not everybody is blessed with our magic.
Who did Sky have? Do we know? Just
they call it Kay Bully because she made that bizarre noise when the result came in. I call it the sound of impartiality. I don't know if you saw it. Just the wild excitement of impartiality.
OK, Nick, we have... Sorry, I may have jumped one there. Let me... no, that is you again. OK, that's interesting. You're in 2 in a row, Nick. This is obviously to make up for your being cruelly snipped at the end of the last section. This is the legal secretary who could be in line for compensation following the most microaggressions.
Yeah, it's telling a female colleague they look nice could be sexual harassment. Imagine that. So Marcus Hall, a senior lawyer, made such a comment to Megan Bratt, interesting surname in this case, and because he called her nice, and this was a terrible, terrible problem. She said he needed to be careful because he could be the next Marcus Rashford or words to that effect.
No, not Marcus Rashford.
Mason Greenwood.
Yeah.
So sorry. He was just saying he could be a brilliant footballer. He could be a brilliant footballer, is what she was trying to say.
Yes, that's right.
And he said who feeds school children. That was her concern. That was the main concern. So I was just thinking about the Rashford today. Yeah, that's Anyway, the point is, he just said she looked nice, and she's one of these people. I mean, I don't want to say
I think we have got a picture. Let's see if we can get it up. Yeah, there she is. That's her Instagram.
It's horrible.
Kind of. I mean, the thing is, she's clearly quite kind. She has a particular kind of way of looking. I don't know if she's dressed like that at work, but apparently some of the female colleagues at work said that she was.
Yes, they call her Love Island reject.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a strange thing. You get loads of makeup and surgery and things like that. Not saying she had, of course.
Yeah, no,
and then you say, no one say I look nice.
Yeah.
Or don't look at me. It's a very strange provocation.
Yeah. I mean, he's a 60-year-old man whose attentions were possibly unwelcome, and apparently he was talking about how his previous girlfriend cheated on him and he used prophylactics or something. I think he had a sort of smutty conversation. Yeah. Is that classic sexual harassment in the workplace? You know, the thing, flirting. Yeah. You know, it's basically, are you a handsome man or are you a...
Well, that's it. I think also it seems to be, it wasn't just him saying, oh, you look nice today. He was like, oh, you look nice today. Oh, am I allowed to say that? Or whatever. It's a little bit creepy.
No is the answer. In a legal
that
sense.
Will cost you. Yeah. Anyway, they haven't set the compensation yet, but let that be a warning. The Guardian now, Josh, and they have a blueprint for asylum, which amounts to let them in, I make.
Yeah, exactly. Human rights groups give Starmer blueprint for asylum overhaul. And this is a bunch of organisations have come together and giving their... the Guardian has seen it, surprise, surprise, with 9 key demands, and they can do whatever they want. Like I pledged, I wish Starmer would give me free board games, or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, this isn't news as such. That's their job, is to have open
Unless
borders.
there are these organisations, I don't know whether these are among them, of course, but we know that this is a phenomenon that exists now, which are funded by the government. I mean, whichever government it is. I think Blair set a lot of them up in order to produce reports and research which support what the government wants to do, but give the appearance that this is a kind of...
Yeah, I don't think this is that sort of that vibe. But they have obviously an agenda. They want more people coming in, and they want they don't want like the barges and all of this stuff. But...
And how do we? I mean, we've had this conversation. It's been going on for a long time. Obviously, we all know that a lot of hotels are full of asylum seekers, and the system is backed up. And there is a part of me thinks if they're here, they may as well at least go to work.
Well, that's part of this, but the worry is if they're not... Yeah, no one likes the hotels and barges solution, really, but then it says put them in communities instead.
Don't want that either.
No. If you listen to this, it'll just be migrants taking over the UK and it'll be a disaster.
Nightingale centres again. I don't know. It's not easy, is it? Of course.
The point is they can write this letter to Keir Starmer, but it's political suicide. He recognises, I believe, that there is an issue here. Even if he doesn't agree with it, he recognises that there are people out there, the voters, who want this issue dealt with. Yeah. So he's not going to just...
But do you think he's got any solution that hasn't occurred to the Tories and that doesn't involve Rwanda?
ID cards. That's the Blair solution that he's trying to push. Right. That makes you... we're not yet to see exactly how it makes you safe, but it solves all immigration, apparently.
Biometrics. OK, over to Windsor Castle now, and this could be a place that could house a lot of asylum seekers. But in the meantime, Extinction Rebellion. Rebellion? Yeah. It's how the king says it.
Yeah. It's Extinction Rebellion plan mass occupation of Windsor Castle grounds. So they're saying that I love this. They're talking about it being a direct challenge to the king, like it's 1649. I mean, what are you doing? They recognise that Charles has actually been quite sort of green, but they say they're targeting the system, man. It's just completely lame. And apparently they're talking about Windsor Castle has been chosen as an embodiment of a broken and unjust system. Really? Isn't it the embodiment of sort of a nice bit of tourism and some tradition?
Windsor Castle is the embodiment of the way human beings used to behave before we were a threat to the planet, surely. I mean, virtually no fossil fuels at at all.
Bring back castles.
I do think also, most famously, they built Windsor Castle too close to Heathrow Airport, didn't they? That's the old joke. I mean, that's where Extinction Rebellion should be, surely.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it really sounds like they just want a festival for 3 days. Obviously, Glastonbury wasn't enough for them. They got a taste for that, and they want to have another 3 days. The idea that the king can, A, do anything, and also they're going to go to this park and just ruin it? Essentially is what they're going to do.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of litter. I wonder whether the king has indicated he is sympathetic, though. Maybe he has.
Well, they know he's obviously he wants to save the planet. Everyone wants a planet that's saved, but how do we do it?
Well, there we are. Those are the quandaries we all face. We have the final section coming up. Eton's smartphones, and the bliss it is to be in that dawn awake. See you in a couple of minutes.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Do you put jam or cream first on your scone? Divisive.
A new study has found that 44% of Brits put jam on before the cream. Which is the right way to eat a scone?
In my opinion, definitely jam first. But I have to say, do you know what? As long as you enjoy it and it's delicious, and you've got nice scone, nice jam, amazing clotted cream, who cares?
Paul, why the jam first?
Because I love that chilled clotted cream that you hit first, then into that room temperature jam, and then that lovely baked scone.
And one of our viewers has written in and said actually she puts the jam on first because otherwise you would get it all over, as in it would wobble off on the top of the cream.
But I think it's easy to dribble the jam onto the cream. You're not spreading the jam onto the cream if you put it on top.
I would do jam first because it just seems to make less mess. So the jam spreads easy and just a dollop of cream on top.
Is there much of a market for the savoury ones that you have?
Yeah. You know, like when you're frying onions for a hot dog, like fairground onions, fold that through your scone mix, bake your scone, so you've got this lovely kind of like roasted onion scone
Dawn isn't into it.
Braised beef, clotted cream, horseradish and watercress.
Oh, my word.
Absolutely incredible.
Well, you're very adventurous, Paul, very adventurous.
Yes. But think of it, you know, like when you make beef stew and you put those scones, drop scones on top, like a beef cobbler.
Yeah.
It's that inspiration.
Well, I would call it like a dumpling.
Well, do you think very quickly, do you think these will become a classic?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Because I think there's just so much more to clotted cream, scones than just the traditional cream tea.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
And welcome back to the final section of Headliners. Josh, we have the Times now, two of my least favourite things, work and beaches, and yet others disagree.
Indeed. Sun, sea and spreadsheets, millions to work from beach this summer. So obviously we have a lot of work from home. It's all set up, so why don't you go and work from the beach as well? People can go on holiday, extend their holiday a few days and work during that time.
Yep.
And there's a different set of priorities. Partly it's about attracting Generation Z. But also it's like, as one of the bosses says here, you know, if you don't trust your employees to be productive regardless of location, why did you hire them in the first place? I think as long as the job's done, why not? Someone could work for a couple of hours in the morning, get that part of their task done, and...
I honestly have no idea whether it works at all. I know I personally sometimes do miss like the idea of an office, a community, some people to keep an eye on me and make sure that I'm working and stuff, I think it would probably be beneficial for me. But I've been working from home, like writing and stuff, for decades. I've completely forgotten all the downsides of it and the distractions and the endless interruptions. But it does feel like if you were in 40-degree heat and there were flies buzzing around and there was the cool of the ocean and I think I'd find it quite hard to maintain any kind of concentration. I
find it very hard to believe you could get any work done at the beach. Unless you're a lifeguard, then it's almost ideal. But I find it very hard to believe. We have no separation with work anymore, do we, at all?
No.
I want to be more like Starmer sometimes. Clock off at 6 p.m, go home, just, maybe that's better.
The worst thing about the whole, the modern economy, everyone works in the service industry. You never fully stop working. Your weekends,
you never
your phone, exactly, you never know. It kind of ebbs. It's like a tide, isn't it? It's never fully out or in. But I guess when they say the beach, they're not just talking about the beach. They're maybe saying, maybe you rent a holiday home. It might even be in somewhere cooler, for the summer. But it might.
Or you just work for a few hours at home before you go to the beach or whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Some of the world's great books have been written in sort of holiday locations and things like that, haven't they? I mean, it depends if you're in the creative industry or whether you're trying to do spreadsheets. I think you'll be difficult.
I'm the wrong guy. I haven't left the country in 8 years. Yeah. I've been to Brighton Beach.
The ankle tag comes off. You're going to hit the town. Daily Mail now. Eton rifles is one thing, as I indicated in my trail. But Eton smartphones now, no.
Yeah, it's Eton bans smartphone for new pupils and will issue boys with an offline Nokia handset, aka a burner, instead in bid to improve mental health and behaviour. And Mike Grenier, who's the deputy head, is saying this is going to be better for physical and mental health. Now, I've always thought the problem with this is that you'll get the elites will fall behind. Yeah. And of course, it's sort of, I quite like it in a way because I went to a comprehensive school. They'll be the kids who know how to work TikTok and all the new Farage kids on TikTok. And whereas the elites will be just clueless and they'll just be like pen and paper stuck in the past.
That is a genuine worry that parents have, isn't it? If they don't give their kids smartphones, will they be sort of disabled in terms of their skill set? I think you could pick it up in 6 months.
I don't think it's about being disabled in skill set. I think it's my concern. I've just given my 11, he just turned 11 the other day, and I gave him his phone. Was because it's for socialisation.
Yeah.
They need it. They need to be on WhatsApp.
Well, when I say skill set, I suppose I include the social skills. But when the point comes when you need to pick it up, is the fear you never get it, or miss the years you don't have it?
I regret every time I give them one of my kids a phone. I deeply regret it. I delay it as much as I can.
But what can
you do? The thing is, I think it has the opposite. If Eton's doing it, they're doing it for a reason, because all these studies show that it is bad for your attention, and all these people who don't have smartphones are going to do better at school. Imagine my kids' school, the elder ones in secondary school, they've got these pouches now. The parents, we had to pay like 20 quid, and when they get to school, they get locked as they go in, and they stay. Those phones stay in the pouches all day, and it's making a difference.
They'll be able to read. But the comp kids will be killing on TikTok, so it's a balance.
I feel like I need one of those pouches, to be honest, just at home. I mean, seriously, I'm just like so endlessly distracted. It would be insane if you had one of those in a classroom.
Yeah, no,
and Eton in particular, but a lot of it is very old-fashioned. There's like a kind of range of different offers in independent schools now, and some of them are just like full of high tech. But I think Eton is one of those ones that is quite traditional, right? It has a certain kind of, I don't know, like...
Eton is quite traditional, although it's gone woke now, hasn't it? But...
It is kind of scouting for boys kind of thing, right? It's a sort of, can you survive in the wild? It's got slightly army...
Well, no, because after the Will Nolan thing, they went very woke, didn't they? Remember?
After the what?
Will Nolan, and all that, they went very anti-man and anti-woke.
Yeah.
And very woke, sorry.
Maybe they're swinging back again. Well, I hope so. Guardian now, Josh. I have a strong sense there's a Jeff Goldblum Jurassic Park quote about this sort of thing.
Autism could be diagnosed with stool sample, scientists say. So this is a scientist, and they found it's exciting for two reasons. Because one is this: if this turns out to be valid, which it seems like it is, it could be a cheap and simple test for autism, which is at the moment can take many years to be.
Can it? Okay.
Yeah, to be diagnosed, and. Also, it could even lead to some kind of cure or tempering of it, because people who have autism have different microbes in their stomach, but also it can indicate the levels of autism. So if there's a way of rebalancing, there's a sort of chicken and the egg situation here. If you can sort out the microbes with probiotics and whatnot, you might be able to also have an impact on the autism. Yeah.
So this is not exactly genetics.
It is. They're saying that it's down to 90% of genetics. 60 to 90% could be genetics. But
why can you not just do that by like a cheek swab then, rather than a stool sample? Is it something to do with the actual?
Well, even if you have the genetics, maybe it's triggered.
It's the gut biome, and they don't know. I mean, I've always thought this was correct. I heard it was debunked, but now it's rebunked, which is that there's a link between the gut biome and autism. But they haven't known if it's because of due to autism or the other way around, like the autism caused it. Because the autism could cause it because you have like such a non-varied diet. You know, you just eat white bread. It could be that way, but it's probably the other way around, that the gut biome is causing the autism.
Food of only one colour. Is that
yeah.
But
fascinating.
The scientists, they analysed stool samples from 1,627 children aged 1 to 13, which is a good job if you can get it.
Yeah, well, we wish them well. Guardian now, this might be our final story, so make it a good one. It's for our early morning repeat viewers, I think, Nick.
Yeah, it's the cult of 5 a.m. Is rising at dawn the secret of health and happiness? And the short answer is no, obviously not. Although I am up at 5, but that's usually because I'm still up and have chronic insomnia. But maybe I'm part of the club in that way. I meet these people on the other side, and I'm doing different things, you know, obviously to them.
Handover. There is I get insomnia sometimes. There's a lovely moment when you realise the dawn is coming up, actually, in the summertime. And
is that lovely?
Yeah,
to me it's disturbing.
I finally feel I can sleep then.
No, because I'm never going to get sleep.
Yeah, you're never going to.
Well, this is the classic thing. This is a Guardian writer who tried it, and people are always doing this. They want to be part of the cool club. They try it. They just find they're exhausted and it's horrible and it doesn't work.
So but some people naturally get up early and go to bed early, and it is weird because it is like it should be transposable, but it's not, is it? Teenagers find it so hard to get up in the morning, right?
Yeah, well, they need obviously they need to sleep.
But they also want to stay up late at night. It's not you can't adapt.
Well, I mean, look, I'm doing a night job now. I get up every morning at 6:30 because I've got to make the kids sandwiches.
Amazing.
And drive them up to the bus stop.
And consequently, you look an absolute bloom of health. Let's go back to one last look at the headlines. We've got Tuesday's front pages for you now. The Times, pressure on Starmer to raise defence spending. The Telegraph, rolling attacks, rowling PM over new women's minister, Louise Dodds. Guardian, Labour to fix front door of NHS by diverting billions to local surgeries. The Express, so what's it to be? Tax rises or cuts to our services. The iNews, Reeves ready for war over the UK's Green Belt as she vows to take on the NIMBYs. And finally, the Daily Star, got 99 problems, but a beach ain't one. Well, that's all we have time for. My thanks to my guests, Josh and Nick. Leo Kearse, will be here tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Kerry Marks and Paul Cox. If you're watching at 5 a.m, you're a champion. Stay tuned for breakfast. Otherwise, thank you for your company. Thank you very much. Good night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. The weather's going to make it feel not much like July as we go through the next 24 hours, with some heavy persistent rain pushing up from the south in association with a weather system that's already made its way across some southern parts so far today. The heaviest rain through this evening and overnight is going to be across parts of southwest England and South Wales. Could see totals of 60 to 70 millimetres over higher ground, some travel disruption and some flooding possible. Even elsewhere across much of England and Wales, it is going to turn pretty wet overnight, but with that, temperatures not dropping a huge amount. A different story further north across Scotland, Northern Ireland, where we get any clear skies, temperatures will dip into mid-single figures. Taking a look closer at first thing tomorrow morning, and by 7 o'clock in the morning, far southern parts of England. Here, the heavy persistent rain will have cleared, but it's staying cloudy with some damp weather around. More persistent rain lingering across this central slice of the UK, and this rain will be starting to push its way into parts of Northern Ireland and perhaps the far south of Scotland, but elsewhere across Scotland it's actually looking like a fairly decent morning. Perhaps the best of the sunshine will be towards the west, a little bit cloudier towards the south and east. Through the rest of the day we are going to see this band of rain continuing to edge further northwards, so spilling in across more parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and lingering across the far north of England. Elsewhere further south, staying fairly cloudy and some outbreaks of rain around, but there should be some brighter breaks, and in any sunshine, not feeling too bad. Temperatures peaking around 21 or 22 Celsius. Generally, though, they are below average for the time of year. More very wet weather to come across far northern parts as we go through Wednesday. A bit drier further south, maybe some sunny breaks at times, but also some showery outbreaks too. And there will be some more showers to come as we go through Thursday and Friday. That being said, there is a drying trend, so optimistically hoping for some drier weather by the weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Very good evening to you and welcome to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. It's the first full week of the new Labour government. Sir Keir Starmer is already causing controversy with plans for a closer relationship with the EU and a solution to overcrowded prisons by releasing lags early. We thought politics was bad here. Just look at these scenes across the channel in France where left and right have clashed on the streets. Following the latest election results, we'll go live to Paris with all of the latest. And we'll have an exclusive chat from the man himself, Nigel Farage. We spoke to him earlier about what he does next and the future of the Conservatives. And we'll also be joined by England legend and a hero of mine, Peter Shilton, to talk about Wednesday's Euros semi-final with Netherlands. Get in touch with your thoughts on tonight's topics by visiting gbnews.com/you'll say. But first, here's the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom tonight is that Downing Street has admitted this summer will be challenging for the new Labour government as the first boatful of migrants since the general election crossed the English Channel this morning. A group of around 64 illegal migrants was intercepted by a Border Force vessel and taken to a migrant processing centre in Dover Harbour. And this afternoon, another boat also attempted the same crossing from France. It brings the total number of migrants crossing so far this year to more than 13,500. That's up 12% on the same time last year. And it comes after Sir Keir Starmer announced the Rwanda scheme is dead and buried, claiming he's not prepared to continue with gimmick politics. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has concluded a whistle-stop tour of the UK to reset Westminster's relationship with the devolved nations. Sir Keir met political leaders at Stormont as part of his first official visit to Northern Ireland since taking up office. He was accompanied by his new Northern Ireland Secretary, Hilary Benn. The Prime Minister was in Scotland at the weekend and after Northern Ireland went on to Wales, where he met with the First Minister, Vaughan Gething, at the Senedd, amid concerns about the Tata Steelworks in Port Talbot, where thousands of people are facing redundancy. Meanwhile, the new Chancellor was busy outlining her plans to get Britain building again this morning as she announced there's no time to waste in boosting economic growth. Rachel Reeves said she's making it her national mission. It was her first major speech as Chancellor, and she promised major changes to speed up infrastructure projects and unlock private investment.
Well, the number one mission of this incoming Labour government is to grow the economy. And to grow the economy, we need to get Britain building. The status quo of always saying no to new development just isn't going to stand anymore. Because if we continue like this, we'll see living standards continue to decline, fewer and fewer people being able to get on the housing ladder, and we won't be generating the money that we need for our public services. We sought a mandate at the election to grow the economy, and we're determined to do just that.
And there's uncertainty in France, where the French President Emmanuel Macron has asked his Prime Minister Gabriel Attal to stay in office for now as the political deadlock in the country continues. It comes after the left-wing alliance with his party has become the biggest force now in the French Parliament after tactical voting held back the expected victory of the right wing. Marine Le Pen's national rally, the right-wing populist party, came in third despite expectations it would top the poll. And protesters have been venting their feelings in the centre of Paris. There have been riots after the results were announced, and the shape of the future government is still uncertain after no particular group won an absolute majority. The country's outgoing finance minister, Bruno Le Maire, has gone further. He's now warned the most immediate risk is a financial crisis and France's economic decline. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst and I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
A very good evening to you. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GBN Tonight. Well, it's the first full week of a new era of Labour in government. And already they're rattling some cages. There are reports they are considering plans to release offenders from jail after serving just 40% of their sentence as it bids to tackle overcrowding in our prisons. The Rwanda scheme, of course, has already been scrapped on day one. And the first migrants have made the journey across the Channel from France to the UK, as you can see from our pictures now. Seems they didn't get the memo about the new policy from the Labour Party. It comes, of course, as the new Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, launched a new border security command to replace the Conservatives' Rwanda scheme. And in a move that'll surely infuriate the viewers of this show, our new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has vowed to obtain closer ties, you've guessed it, to the European Union. Take a listen to what he had to say earlier on today.
Well, right to say that we want to improve relations with the EU. We think we can get a better deal than the botched deal that Boris Johnson brought home, and we will work on that, understanding the work that needs to be done and the nature of the challenge. But yes, we do want to improve that relationship. In the meantime, we do have to get on with implementing the important changes that are necessary under the existing arrangements that we've got, because we're not going to be able to get a better relationship unless we demonstrate a commitment to the relationship and the agreements that have already been put in place.
Well, it's the first Monday of a new Labour government, a new dawn, and already the red rose is between the teeth in the direction of Brussels. Who would have thought it? Well, joining now in the studio is GB News' political editor Christopher Hope and the former Labour advisor Stella Sandikidu. Welcome to the show, the both of you. Let's start with a sense of crushing inevitability. If you're a sceptic, you may well say that Sir Keir Starmer, lest we forget, campaigned against Brexit, campaigned to cancel Brexit for 3 years, resolutely said we will not rejoin the European Union, and yet, Chris Hope, many will see today's overtures towards Brussels as very, very predictable.
He's still saying we're not going to join the European Union. They are saying, in terms, we won't join the institutions, the customs union, the single market. There won't be any freedom of movement of people coming here. That hasn't changed. What has changed is they're trying to get a better Brexit deal because this cooperation agreement is up for negotiation and he wants to get a better deal. He wants to work with the French. He's made very clear he wants to improve our relationship with the EU, and that means closer trading with the EU. You know, David Lammy, they're all Remain. Martin, I know you used to be in a Brexit party and, you know, this sets your blood boiling, this stuff, but maybe a better deal is what we should do. The fundamentals of Brexit are not going to change according to the government.
According to the government, Stella. Again, forgive me for being a grizzled cynic, but no, I went to Brussels to make sure that they listened to the 17.4 million. I always said I thought that the Conservative government left the cat flap unscrewed to Brussels. And on day one, Sir Keir Starmer and David Lammy are trying to scurry through.
Hey, look, I get it. Labour is in government. You don't want anything to be undone about Brexit. But Keir Starmer said that as long as he's alive, he doesn't think that the UK is going to rejoin the EU. So unless you know something that I don't know, unless there is some plot to take him out, then I don't think we are rejoining the EU. I don't think there is any referendum or any appetite for any referendum in the party. I think that what he's saying is, right, we know that the border crossings, the boat crossings is a very massive big thing. And we know that one of the main things that the Labour Party says we need to do to deal with the boat crossings is we need to have better cooperation with the EU so that they actually help us rather than hinder us. So this is what he means. And also in terms of business, I'm sure, and in terms of trade, I'm sure you too want to see the British economy being helped by a relationship with the EU rather than hindered, right?
Imports and exports to the European Union have increased since Brexit. You could argue we've already made the economic case, but here's what sticks in my craw, and that is David Lammy, the new Foreign Secretary, who compared the European Research Group to Nazis, is now on a charm offensive to Sweden, Germany and Poland, you know, in the name of Great Britain. A lot of people will be watching this show and saying, hang on a minute, we might not rejoin, or we did something worse, death by 1,000 treaties.
No, I mean, that was a spicy comment, but we are at GB News, we are okay with a bit of politically incorrect stuff, aren't we? So he was just trying to put his... I don't know what he was referring to.
Stella, don't you worry, we'll turn into rule takers, not rule makers. That's what's happening here. We'll become like Norway on sea. We'll be stuck with receiving diktats on standards in all sorts of areas that we can't shape because we're not in the European Union. That's what they might risk doing here.
Gosh, I wish we had Norway's growth. They're not doing that, are they? Don't you wish we had their energy security, their cost of living?
They don't make the rules. They have to obey them from the EU.
But they are doing so much better than us. Look, I would exchange that. If it was that simple, I would totally exchange that, but I'm not sure it is.
The thing about this tickling the deal, this kind of tickling the salmon, so to speak, they called it botched, not good enough, but Brussels has been resolutely clear. They don't want to improve the deal. They said the deal is the deal. Brexit means Brexit. This is the deal that we want. Michel Barnier has said all along, if you want to tinker with the deal, you have to accept open borders.
Exactly, and that's exactly the point. Michel Barnier, no longer part of it. He negotiated the deal, didn't he, against David Davis and Theresa May and Oliver Robbins and all the other crowd from the past. But exactly right, and the concern's going to be that to do a deal on small boats, we agreed to take certain numbers of asylum seekers arriving in the EU, and then becomes a kind of they are here forever. I mean, today the government has axed and got rid of the Rwanda plan. The idea of any attempt to stop them coming, to put them off from coming, has gone away. We've now got plans from the Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, to hire this new border security commander, rather similar to the existing senior military person already doing that kind of job. So the idea is they can get a better deal on the migrants arriving here because they have a better arrangement with the EU countries. But what do they want back?
That's the big question. And look, it's only the first Monday morning. We can't expect too much. Border Security Command launched with much trumpet but it seems the people smugglers didn't get the memo. 2 boats rolled in, and the weather wasn't exactly a corker today. Everyone I've spoken to throughout today so far said I think that the boats are just going to keep coming and coming and coming, particularly now Rwanda, even though we can all agree it maybe was a flawed plan, at least it was a deterrent.
I don't know whether it was a deterrent. There wasn't actual evidence, apart from some very anecdotal evidence that some news outlets reported on. There wasn't evidence that this was a deterrent that was actually going to work. But if I go back to the EU, you said that they're going to ask for open borders. I have a question. Would you accept them if they came back and they said something like, we want you to accept, we want you to give visas to young people from the EU to be able to stay for a few years and then come back? Would you accept that? Would that be acceptable?
No.
No, you wouldn't.
Because we did those deals when we did the Brexit deal. That's
on the cards. That's on the cards.
I know this, but the point is, when we start doing these piecemeal, bit by bit deals, in the end, you have an erosion of the central tenets of Brexit.
I mean, yeah, but it's the same with any trade deal. Like if you did a trade deal with India, why do you think that the trade deal with India has been stalling for such a long time?
Well, because India wouldn't say in return for a trade deal you must have opened borders with India, although some might say we've already got that.
Do you not think that the same will happen with trade deals with most countries, really? They will want something in return. You can't just have a trade deal with a country where they say, here, come and sell your stuff. We will not put any taxes up for them. Do whatever you want and we want nothing in return.
But we have trade deals with the European Union now, but it doesn't mean that we have to take freedom of movement. That's the point.
But where is the growth going to come from?
But we're already importing and exporting more to the European Union since Brexit.
Okay, so we're fine. Our growth is fine, our economy is fine, we don't need any more, yes?
Well, we're outperforming the G7, we're outperforming Germany.
You think we're outperforming? I heard that Rachel Reeves, overnight, my God, she works hard, overnight she has commissioned the Treasury to come up with a report where they are finding that because if the growth rate of the UK over the last few years of the Conservative government was the same as comparable G7 economies, there would have been 180 billion more in the British economy. Isn't that insane?
Well, there's 500 billion went out because of lockdowns, which the Labour Party wanted harder, sooner and longer. I think
the Labour Party was not in government. I certainly was not in favour of a lockdown, let me tell you.
But we had no opposition. We had no opposition in our darkest hours economically.
But
the Labour Party nodded along like nodding dogs with lockdowns and never said no to any of it, Chris Hope.
Yes, on COVID, definitely. There was a question. Now, of course, Patrick Vallance, one of the guys behind all those lockdowns, is now back in the government as a Science and Technology Minister. Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot. We spent a lot of money in the past 5 years. It kind of blew the Tory party off its axis. But they didn't do what they said they'd do. They didn't cut migration like they said they would do. They increased taxes when they said they wouldn't do that. I should say, by the way, while we were on air just now, there's been big news in the Tory party. Richard Holden. Yeah. The party chairman's resigned. David Cameron, no longer the Foreign Secretary. Andrew Mitchell is doing that job on some of the movements. I mean, no one cares now. The party's out of office for 5 years, but they are trying to reshape themselves into some form of opposition to this government.
Rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
It's already two fathoms down, Martin, and heading to the floor to be broken up at the moment.
And the iceberg, of course, was the generation. Quickly, shadow cabinet. What do you make of the appointments so far? I've had a bit of a dig at
the cabinet or shadow cabinet.
The shadow cabinet. Obviously, David Lammy, Yvette Cooper, by Joe, she's got a work cut out for her, and Rachel Reeves. She knows truly now that the cupboard is completely bare.
Yeah, and she's got to find growth. So the big thing for Labour is growth, and that's why her speech today in the Treasury to economics correspondents was all about dealing with the planning reforms, this national planning policy framework, publishing a new version of that with the economic mandate back into that. So if you can't really say no to something if it will fuel economic growth. More onshore wind farms. There's no question they are just driving growth. There's all sorts of battles will take place over this summer about unpopular developments. Communities will say, what's this about? I voted Labour, but now they're going to do loads of new houses where I live, and will they be appropriate for where we live? And is there a correct number of people who can build these homes? Lots of battles taking place, I think. Other things in the reshuffle, the Veterans Minister has been demoted to a I'm not sure there is one now, but the Veterans role has now been taken over by John Healey. He's Defence Secretary, sits in Cabinet. That may not be so good for veterans. The feeling of having a veterans minister under Johnny Mercer was having it in a cabinet office away from the MOD, so you could fight for veterans' rights against the MOD. Giving all that job to the Defence Secretary may not help veterans in the long term.
Stella, what do you think we're going to see in terms of this amazing sort of sunlit uplands vision? 2010, Liam Byrne left a note for David Cameron saying there's no money left. We really have got no money left now. The national debt is treble what it was then. The Labour Party, they've really, really got their work cut out for them.
A government really doesn't work like a household, though. It's not like you can... there is no money left, sure, but this is not how it works. There is always productivity that you can squeeze out. And I think that... we already see that with the new onshore plans. They have just lifted the ban on onshore wind buildings, and they've done that without having to ask for any consultation, any strategies, without spending weeks briefing to the press about it. They just took a decision.
It was in the manifesto,
Sarah. It was
It was voted on, so they've done it that way. I mean, there's no vote in Parliament, but it wasn't in the manifesto.
Sure, but you have to admire the fact that they just went ahead and did it. Can you imagine a Conservative Prime Minister doing that? Can you imagine Conservative MPs where there will be a wind turbine brought into their constituency? Can you imagine?
Would you live next door to one?
Yes, I would.
You wouldn't mind it? This massive,
I live in London.
thing next to your house?
I live in London. I live close to all sorts of things.
A lot of viewers live in the countryside and they don't want to see wind farms.
To pay less for my energy every month? Yes, I would live next to one.
OK, Stella, Chris, you have to call time on the hot air. Sorry, the debate from the turbines there. Superb stuff. Thank you very much. Now, also with me is Mike Goldsworthy, Chair of the European Movement UK. Mike, welcome to the show. So, day one, Monday morning of a new government. David Lammy's got the red rose between his teeth on a charm offensive around Sweden, Germany, Poland and overtures over the Irish Sea from Dublin. Do you think this is day one of the long march to rejoin?
I very much hope so. I don't know if it is, but that's certainly what we ultimately want to see at European Movement UK. We think Brexit's been a disaster. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for our businesses, our citizens' rights, or our culture. And so, I mean, wherever this government ends up, the steps that they're taking now, I think people can universally agree that they're sensible and they don't impinge on any big constitutional questions. But yeah, there are many of us in this country who think that Brexit took us into a geopolitically untenable position, and we'd really rather get back with the team.
So, Mike, I can see a glint in your eye there. You must be excited about the prospect of a Sir Keir Starmer government. They say, superficially, they say on the surface, there are no plans to rejoin the European Union. But I think many people watching this show, many people believe that that's not the case. And if we don't have a second referendum, at least not within the next 10 years, we might have something else altogether more sinister, death by 1,000 treaties.
Right. So I don't think that is actually their plans. I think that they came into government a lot more quickly than they were anticipating. They didn't think at the end of 2022 Liz Truss would give them that Ming vase of a massive poll lead. And so they just said, right, we've got to carry this across the ice rink. We are not changing policy here. And also, I don't think they've had the bandwidth to do all of the policies that they would want in this space. And I've heard this from various angles. So, I mean, the most important thing for them immediately is to try and calm things down, make everything stable, and try and get some growth where they can without doing anything too big and intrusive. But clearly, as they go on, and businesses are going to be saying, we want to tear up as much red tape as we can. There will be the younger demographics that do want Erasmus Plus back, or youth mobility schemes, or at least mobility schemes for those people working in Europe in the arts or music. So I think that Labour doesn't have plans to break its red lines. However, there will be huge pressures on those red lines from the population at large.
Okay, I think that's a yes. I think that you want...
So what specifically is it? I don't think this government has plans to break its red lines. However, I do think that demands to break those red lines will come on them from business community, from the citizenry at large, from various different campaigning groups that basically want to open up freedom of travel again, open up free trade again.
Freedom of movement?
Changes again.
Open borders, is that a price you'd be prepared to take? Michel Barnier said if you want a better deal with the European Union, you have to have open borders. Is that worth a price worth paying?
He said free movement. See, we don't have open borders because we're not in Schengen, so all of our borders, you have to show your passport at.
But free movement of people, Michel Barnier said, would be a price that Britain would have to pay. You think that's a price worth paying?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I actively want free movement because it did us so much good. Look, for example, at what happened when we took away free movement. We had the immigration go up, but it was from India and Nigeria. And what rights do we have to go and live and work in India and Nigeria? Maybe we want
Many, Mike Goldsworthy would agree the Conservatives made a pig's ear of that. I'm afraid, Mike, we have to leave that. We simply ran out of time. I have to close the borders on this conversation. Mike Goldsworthy, Chair of the European Movement UK, thank you very much. Now, still to come, as the government considers releasing inmates early to stop prison overcrowding, we'll be asking, is Labour going soft on crime? And, of course, we'll have Nigel Farage. See you in a minute. If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said stump. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere. Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, with just 700 spaces left across the country, Britain's prisons are at breaking point. According to new reports, the new Labour government is considering releasing prisoners early to reduce pressure on resources, in some cases allowing inmates to leave after serving just 40% of their sentences. And the appointment of shoe repair boss James Timpson as Prisons Minister has already raised some eyebrows. If you're wondering why, just take a look at this.
Have 85,000 people in prison. It's going to go up to 100,000 pretty soon. A third of them should definitely be there. There's another third in the middle, which probably shouldn't be there, but they need some other kind of state support. A lot of them have got massive mental health issues. They've been in prison, in and out of prison all their lives. And then there's another third, and there's a large proportion of women. Prison is a disaster for them because it's just putting them back in the offending cycle.
Well, that sounds very much to me like going soft on law and order. But joining me now to discuss this is the solicitor, legal commentator and the journalist Joshua Rosenberg. Joshua, welcome to the show. Daily Telegraph today were calling James Timpson the most dangerous politician in Britain because of his appetite for early release. What do you make of that?
That's pretty daft, isn't it? The fact is that the government has got to reduce the prison population. The previous government knew that and didn't do so. The present government is left with the problem and has got to fix it.
And in many ways, Joshua, this is yet another inherited problem from the Conservative Party. A lot of big decisions being kicked into the long grass, and the Labour Party have got the mother of all in trays. Only 700 spaces left across the entire prison system in England and Wales. But what about another answer, Joshua? What about building more prisons?
Well, the new government has said that it will continue with the plans put forward by the last government to build new prisons, but they won't be ready for another couple of years, and we're talking about a couple of weeks. The previous Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, to his credit, told the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, that something had to be done. Either you had to stop short-term sentences, so if you were getting less than a year, well, you wouldn't go to prison. Rishi Sunak rejected that, or he said, well, we've got to start letting people out. Now, Alex Chalk did let prisoners out up to 70 days before the end of their sentence, but that headroom has been exhausted, and as you say, the current government has inherited the problem. It knew it was going to get this. It's avoided having to take emergency powers under the Civil Contingencies Act, but I do think it will have to introduce new legislation which will have to be passed in the next 2 or 3 weeks before the summer recess to deal with the problem.
And Joshua, 4-year sentences, this isn't shoplifting or parking fines. It can be fairly major drug deals, for example. What deterrent effect do you think it sends out to people on the streets of Britain when they learn today, well, you'd only have to serve 40% of your sentence?
Well, they only have to serve 50% at the moment. They're let out on licence after they've served half their sentence, and so this will be a little less. I don't think it'll make any more of or less of a deterrent. The one thing that will not deter people from committing crimes is if word gets round that they won't be sent to prison because there aren't any prison places for them to be sent to. It's entirely appropriate that the government has to do something and do something quickly.
Excellent stuff. Thank you for joining us, Joshua Rosenberg, on the show. Excellent opinions as ever. Now, coming up, we'll go live to Paris after the shocking results of the French parliamentary elections. And with 2 days to glory, we'll be asking, is it finally coming home for England? And later in the show, we'll also hear exclusively from Reform UK party leader, Mr Nigel Farage.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said, "Stump, you made my argument for me."
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight. I'm Martin Daubney. Now, it's not just the Brits who headed to the polls last week, because over in France, the second round of the French parliamentary elections has sent shockwaves across all of Europe, with the far left New Popular Front unexpectedly winning the most seats. Macron's Ensemble Alliance coming second, and Marine Le Pen's National Rally underperforming. Pollsters' predictions in third place. Well, as you can see on your screens right now, riots quickly spread across Lyon last night. And now questions remain over the future of French politics. Can the coalition hold? Well, here's the quandary, because has President Macron paid a massive, massive price? He called this election early, don't forget, just like Rishi Sunak did in the United Kingdom. He didn't have to do this. He did this. This is on the streets of Paris. You can see bikes on fire. The French, not for the first time, the French are revolting. A huge, huge price could be paid for this, because the policies of the left-wing alliance coming in could cost more than 200 billion euros. And joining me now to discuss the latest live from Paris is Times journalist David Chazan. David, welcome to the show. President Macron bet the house on this early election to keep out Le Pen. But, David, is the price he will pay by forming a coalition with the left going to be huge for France? Could this coalition bankrupt the country?
No, I don't think so, because I think we're still a long way to go before we know who is going to form the next government. It looks like the centre-left and President Macron's centrists and the centre-right are determined to keep the far left out of government. Supporters of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who is the leader of the far-left party France Unbowed, he's a figure who is often compared to Jeremy Corbyn, and his supporters are pushing for him to become Prime Minister. but he's a hugely divisive figure. And even some members of his own party don't want to see him in power. As we're speaking now, Martin, negotiations are going on between the different parties that make up the left-wing alliance to see who they could put forward as a prime minister. But the parties in the alliance range from the moderate centre-left socialists through the Greens, communists and France Unbowed. And they've got very little common ideological ground. They banded together 3 weeks ago before the election to bar the way for the far right, but agreeing on a common programme or a common candidate for Prime Minister is going to prove extremely difficult for them. So we could see a period in which France has a parliament that struggles to legislate because no one has the working majority.
And David, Mélenchon, as you said there, he also refused to brand Hamas a terrorist organisation, got a lot in common there with Jeremy Corbyn. But some of the economic policies on the table would surely put the guillotine to France's economy, lowering the retirement age to 60 from 64. That would cost £49 billion per year, capping the prices of gas, food and other essentials. A further £24 billion. This is cloud cuckoo land politics, isn't it?
Well, that's what investors think. I mean, under President Macron, foreign investment in France has risen quite a lot, but the markets were very concerned about the notion that the far left would be able to apply their economic policies, which would increase France's already large debt. France has public debt amounting to something like 110% of GDP. It's running a big deficit. Public finances are under strain, and as far as the business community and investors are concerned, the last thing they need is a radical far-left agenda. But the interesting thing is that the economic policies of Marine Le Pen's populist National Rally, often termed a far-right party, are very similar to those of the far left. She also wants to reduce taxes and increase wages and do all sorts of other things, and doesn't really appear to have